Good evening, everyone. It's Vaishali from InnoServe, and warm welcome to everyone for attending this webinar. It's indeed pleasure to host the webinar on strategies and insight on managing organizational performance in the current times. As we know, we have industry stalwart from HR Fraternity to share their views in today's webinar. Before starting the session, let me quickly share the guidelines of webinar. This webinar is a live webinar with industry expert from HR Fraternity. The webinar will be recorded and will be shared to you through mail as well as it will be posted on digital HR social media handles. Regarding your questions and answer, you can ask questions in Q&A sections which is shown to your right side of the window. We will try to address them as much as possible. For any issues, query, question and challenges, you can find the contact details in Q&A window. Please feel free to have conversation there as once the webinar start, we will not able to pause it. Hope everyone has set and now we are ready to begin the webinar with 500 participants so far. So let me hand it over to Mr. Rahul Jain, MD of InnoServe Group and Director of Digital HR. He will set the context of this webinar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Vaishali, and a very warm evening to all of you who are attending this session today. We have a very interesting session topic and much more interesting lineup of speakers, which comes from a very, very diverse background in order to ensure that we will have a fantastic knowledge dissemination and deliberation on the given topic of strategies and insights on managing organizational performance in the current times. Who better than us in the HR field can understand the impact and the challenges that we are facing today? And there is no one fit all answer. So yes, our experts here today will discuss from their own personal experiences and the real-time case studies as what way they are handling these challenges at their independent organizations. I'm so glad that digital HR is growing feet by feet, with month on month and day by day. We are now a 6,000 plus member community across different platforms. And interestingly, our WhatsApp groups are buzzing and more groups are taking shape as we speak. I'm thankful to some of our sponsors and knowledge partner. Today's event, is going to be moderated by Mr. Gaurav Bakshi. He is the founder of Straightboard Services, which is one of the leading HR community platform. I welcome you, Mr. Gaurav. We have with us Mr. Tarun Jain from Bennett Coleman and Company Limited, popularly known as Times Group. He's the head of HR systems and technology at Bennett Coleman and Company. We have with us Ms. Radhika Gupta, Head HR, BD Technology Campus India LLP. She's based out of Bangalore and she brings to you a lot of interesting knowledge from the healthcare pharma industry. We have with us then Mr. Jitesh Anand, a consultant and an expert from the SMB segment with very rich experience, going to be discussing the understanding of HR landscape in the SMB sector. With us, we have Mr. Joy George from CDK Global India. He's the Senior Director and Head HR at CDK Global. He's going to bring in the perspective from the IT industry. So I'm sure you must have noted it's a very, very diverse mix of people that we have today with us. And I couldn't wait more but to hand it over to Mr. Gaurav Bakshi to take the discussion forward. Over to you, Mr. Gaurav Bakshi.
Hi, am I audible there, Rahul? Can you hear me? Just doing a round check with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Perfect, sir.
So, firstly, thank you, Digital HR, Rahul, Ritesh, and the entire team at InnoServe for bringing us all together and talking about something which I think everybody's been thinking about. And बहुत साल पहले, when I was growing up, there was a book called, or a thing called, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And that statement sort of stuck out in my mind for almost all my life until now. And I realized that never has this applied more truly to us than now, in ever before times. I mean, I think in the context of what we've seen in the business world, this is one of the biggest that we've come across, in terms of um, something which has really shaken us. It has challenged our performance. It has challenged our character. It has, challenged livelihood of individuals and so on and so forth. So I think, uh, very, very pertinent for us to get into talking about some of the things that, how are organizations coping up. And, just to give you a little context, I was looking up some numbers into what the industry is really saying. And this is a recent survey by CEO Lounge and Oryx, which happened, which said that over 71% of the organizations are feeling, that their business has been seriously impacted. I mean, the others are obviously feeling marginal impact. Very few % feeling that okay, their business is still the same or growing, but nearly 3/4 of the industry, going through and feeling that they've been badly impacted. Nearly 66% feel that revenue generation has become a big uphill task, and nearly 80% think that recovery is yet another 6 months away. And every day there are stories from different corporate houses which we keep hearing. But amidst all this, I think it's great that we've had a very, very diverse panel of speakers who's assembled with us here today. And it'll be really interesting to see, how they view these challenges. What are some of the, key challenges they're dealing with? How are they coping up as an organization and as an industry to handle these? And what do they think of the road to recovery? So without taking too much time, I'd like to invite all the panelists one by one to share their opening remarks, and then we deep dive into some very specific conversations with them. First up, I'd like to invite Joy to open the floor for us and share his perspective on some of the macro views that he has for us. So over to you, Joy. Thank you.
Thanks, Gaurav. Interesting. You opened it up pretty well. When the going is tough, only the tough gets going, and that's the real spirit of going as well. Great opportunity Friday evening, 500 odd people who are keen to understand how do we navigate through these uncertain times. Absolutely the right thing to do before we hit to the real weekend, Saturday, Sunday. The most important thought that comes to my mind as we speak at this point of time from a leadership perspective, Gaurav, is leaders are driving without a rear view mirror. Leaders are driving these days without a rear view mirror. And for me, one of the drivers, not one of those most expert drivers, thinking of driving itself is scary, but driving without a rear view is even more. I don't know how many of us would really like to take the risk of driving without a rear view mirror. What it all means to say is, I bring in 20+ years of experience in the industry, doing human resource for various organizations. I still don't have the confidence to say that I have solutions to all the problems that I'm facing at this point of time, managing this absolutely new normal. And when I said the new normal, I firmly realized this is not a normal thing at all. All of us are struggling to deal with it while we keep hearing it as new normal. I don't think many of us are prepared to accept it as new normal. Life needs to change. We need to find a way out. And if I have to say, there are 3 challenges essentially, Gaurav, that I see from a leadership perspective at this point of time. The first set of the challenge that I saw was, when all of us had to rush home, in the sense of shut down the office and then get home. And in the whole process, what we had to at best do was to make sure the machines are shifted home. And that most of the organizations and leaders successfully did. And then, of course, we did a pat on the back for ourselves, saying that we managed it well. And before we could relax, the second phase started, how do I keep the workforce engaged, or how do I keep my team productive enough, which was probably the next biggest challenge, what I call it as a virtual leadership challenge. Until then, that virtual leadership challenge probably did not exist. And we are dealing with it at this point of time. Some of the organizations have probably switched back as well. And as we switch back, the third challenge comes in, which is now shifting people home from home to the office, which is no longer a shifting of machine. It is going to be the shifting of the mindset. And that mindset shifting is probably the next set of challenge that leaders are going to deal with. And if I can add or to compound the third level of leadership challenge, what the reason why it compounds is a leader is going to deal with a hybrid category of people, half in the office and half at home. And it's a kind of unlock unsafe environment. The environment is pretty unlocked at this point of time, but people still feel unsafe. And that's the real challenge that leaders are going through. And that's probably the top topic of discussion at this point of time. And I want to end with, again, the statement that you made: when the going is tough, only the tough gets going.
Absolutely well summarized, Joy. I think you sort of hit it on the head. We don't have solutions yet. And, it was all about, firstly getting work home, and now it's about getting back to office and, dealing with all the insecurities and the challenges. So great, good initial points. Now I move to Jitesh. Jitesh, your take from a macro standpoint.
Thank you, Gaurav. Good evening, friends in the HR community. In my role as an OD practitioner for about 24 plus years, and as a HR leader for an organization currently, and as a business leader in India, I have the privilege of working with a cross-section of organizations in multiple sectors and geographies. And today I'll like to focus on the MSME sector. And in my view, the organization themes like performance today is much more impacted by external events and issues like never before. And that's more clearer and more impactful for smaller organizations like MSMEs. Many of us know that SMEs are the backbone of the national and the global economy. More than 90% of businesses, 50% of employment worldwide is generated by SMEs. And when you look at emerging markets, most formal jobs are generated by SMEs, about 7 out of 10 jobs, probably. Yet SMEs are highly vulnerable and less resilient to this macro changes, dynamic changes that are happening across the world. ILO, the International Labour Organization, what it says is, and paints a very dismal picture. For 430 million enterprises across the world face high risks of serious disruption. These enterprises are operating in the hardest hit economic sectors. About 200 million in the wholesale and retail sectors, 100 million in manufacturing, 50 million in the accommodation and food services business, another 50 million in the real estate and other business activity. All around us, there's going to be disruption, and the largest employment generating sector, the MSME, is facing a huge challenge. And as leaders and members of organization, we cannot overlook the importance of creating an enabling environment for sustaining and making the MSMEs more resilient. We need to weave these MSMEs with more sensitivity and differently from other large corporates. We need to support MSMEs as a society as well. MSMEs probably don't even have enough workforces, as they're largely dependent on cheap migrant labor. And for MSMEs, performance, and I'm just again coming back to the performance team, Gaurav, it's a survival theme. They do not have the luxury of higher order performance motivators like digital tools and cash reserves to even provide basic hygiene motivators. The moot question, therefore, is how does an MSME that is struggling to survive in a sector that is struggling to survive impact individual employees' performance? And the good news is that over their lifetimes, our MSMEs have survived. And this round as well, it may not be very different. Like you said, tough times, but the tough people may still be back in the game. Thank you, Gaurav, and over to you.
Thanks, Hitesh, for bringing in the SME perspective. And I think all of us realize that all around us, there's so much work SMEs do for our livelihood and, their livelihood in that sense. So clearly, I mean, it's not just about the larger organizations, but it's about so much, local businesses that we have to also keep thinking about. And as you rightly said, there's disruption hitting their doors, and anyway there was a large wave of technology and muscle and capital that's disrupting their business, and now suddenly you have something they have never dealt with before, and they don't have the cash flows to sustain, they don't have economic muscle to pull back on. So interesting thoughts there, and we will again come back and deep dive into this. Meanwhile, Radhika, over to you for your initial remarks, please.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Joy. Thanks, Jitesh. I think some really interesting perspectives from all of you there. Um, to me, Gaurav, the primary thing is that organization performance has always been the core for any organization. And in these unprecedented times, I would say that organizations are figuring out new ways to adapt and ensure business continuity to be able to deliver results. Now, the need to change, I would say, is non-negotiable right now. We've been talking about it for many, many years of this whole resistance to change or bringing in large-scale transformations. I would say this is just non-negotiable. And fortunately or unfortunately, everyone realizes this, whether it is leadership, the employees themselves, the customers, or for that matter, the shareholders. Everybody is realizing this need, and what they are now working towards is there is a greater acceptance to alternative ways of doing business, alternative ways of just staying connected and ensuring that there is business delivery. So I would say the world, so to say, has come together not just to deal with the situation, but also have the eye on the end result and make sure that there is business continuity to get to the end goal. That's my bit there, Gaurav.
Super remarks, Radhika. I think HR practitioners and leaders have spent decades for in terms of their efforts to be able to drive change in organizations. And what we've seen in the last 3 odd months, I think we've never been able to achieve in the last 3 decades what of effort possibly. So clearly, I think the acceptance, the realization, the acceptance, and the need to find alternates to stay relevant and to stay alive. I think a large battle won there already. Is what I feel. So brilliant point there, and we'll again come back to that as well as the business continuity aspects that you were talking about. But before we get to the deep dive, I want to hear Tarun's views with us. Tarun's here. Tarun, over to you, please.
Thanks, Gaurav. Some interesting perspectives there. So both, I think a lot of it is already said by other panelists. So both professionally and personally, right? These are unusual and unique times. No one imagined that what started as health crisis would turn into a economic crisis. In fact, we never preempted that it would impact the 3 Ws. When I say 3 Ws, it is work, workplace, and workforce at such a volatile pace. But I firmly believe that each crisis brings an opportunity, especially to those who are agile and adaptable, right? We at BCCL, the largest media house, have accepted it as a big opportunity to rethink and redefine our 3 Ws. When we look around our ecosystem, everyone is facing the same storm, but the boat size may differ, right? For example, the pharma companies like the pharma companies and the e-commerce companies like Amazon and others, they are utilizing it as a big opportunity, whereas some industries are struggling to survive. To give a few examples, like multiplexes have been shut down since last 4 months. And unfortunately, their future is uncertain because the operational costs are on and there is no customer footfall. If I talk about media and the entertainment industry, these are surely the trying times. If you talk about media industry, our focus is content and our asset is the people, right? If my product, that is the newspaper, doesn't reach the reader early morning, then it becomes obsolete, and therefore the shelf life is strictly bound by the time. Having said that, as an anti-fragile organization, we have been able to quickly kind of work around to ensure safety measures, adapt to the new ways of working, and enable our workforce with the right tools to help them deliver. With business getting impacted, uncertain market, each one of us may become insecure. It's a human tendency. So as an organization, we need to step up and take proactive measures to ensure emotional, physical, and mental well-being of an employee. Hence, employee learning and engagement becomes the top priority for us, especially during these trying times. So what we are doing as an organization for these times to build trust and kind of reassure the employee is, we are doing a lot of things, but I'll just mention 2 or 3 of them. One is being approachable. Leaders needs to be approachable. Employees need constant kind of conversations and pat on the back. At Bennett Evans calls, for HR, we have it twice a week. It's not about reporting on work, but to build togetherness and kind of emotional support for the team. Second is enable through technology. So we are not shying away for investing in technology for improving the employee engagement and experience. We are changing our processes to meet the new normal or new abnormal, whatever we can say that. And we need to invest in people to upskill them and reskill them. That is we have taken as a core agenda. That's all from my side on the topic, Ritesh. Sorry, Gaurav.
Great. Thanks, Tarun. I think your entire larger message seems to really bring us to the fact of preparedness, right? I mean, because while a lot is being said about what's happening, I think you touched a few very pertinent points in terms of preparing from how do we handle all this, whether it's technology or it's learning or it's removing the insecurity in terms of the employees. So good. So great. We've had, I think from the four of you, we've had some very distinct themes come out, and I'd like to approach some of these themes in greater depth now. One of the first things we want to talk about today is the whole context of the challenges that your organization in particular or your industry in particular has faced. And why I say this is, from a sectoral standpoint, because, while the reality is true and universal for all of us, it's created a whole lot of opportunities, as Tarun mentioned, for the likes of, online businesses, for the likes of pharma companies, for the likes of FMCG companies, and, they've never had such spikes in demand. And, while on if you speak about them, it's really about how do they produce 3x of what they've ever produced, especially in times like these. And you see a very different charter of challenges from HR folks in lucky couple of sectors that we are talking about. And on the larger side, there is a lot of dismay, in some of the other organizations, and hence very, very unique challenges, and both from an organization standpoint as well as from a leadership disposition standpoint, and how do you tackle that? So would love to hear some insights, get some insights from you. Again, Joy, I'd come back to you for your remarks in looking at these dimensions of org and leadership challenges.
Right. Like you said, Gaurav, maybe I will fall back onto what my current organization is doing predominantly for my thought process. That's what is shaping up in my mind at this point of time. Like I said, we are going through a phase, wherein not many can claim that, I have an experience of dealing with it. So that, makes everybody uncomfortable to propose anything as a solution. So what are we really doing? We are, relying on our own gut feel as to what is the next best thing to do. For us, I represent IT organization, more specifically IT organizations that are into product development. For us, if you ask me, we can essentially look at three phases even in this time. One is a phase of survive, in the sense of can we operate everything from remotely, and how long, how best, how seamlessly. I think we have all overcome that successfully. For us, it was relatively easy because work from home or remote working was not anything unknown or unusual to an organization like ours. I'm sure so is the case with most of the IT organizations, purely because the nature of the work that they do and the capability to run it remotely. I think most of the organizations like ours would be in a stage of thrive, in the sense of I think we already discussed about some organizations you mentioned, Gaurav. Organizations, looking at this as an opportunity to do a set of things that can actually set them up for success in the coming days or coming months. So organizations like ours, we are focusing more on the thrive stage, where find the advantage in the adversity, and see what can be innovated. What does that mean? Can we reposition the existing products to the market? Can we accelerate new products into the market? Can we invest in something completely new? And then, of course, are there opportunities to look at anybody who is really struggling, so that we can look at probably acquiring also. So these are, I'm not necessarily saying that we are busy doing the last thing that I said, but what I meant to say was that organizations are looking at opportunities purely because I would think they are in the thrive stage at this point of time. And for us at CDK, which is into automotive e-commerce, in the sense of we enable dealers to run their business through our ERP system, and that's the core of our business. Of course, in India, it is still taking time, but automotive industry elsewhere outside India is picking up, and our dealers have been finding our solutions pretty handy, and they have come up and asked us questions as to how best can you strengthen more of hands-free, touch-free kind of a dealing when a customer is wanting to buy a car, and that without walking into a dealer shop. Can they buy a car doing everything online, and then of course the car getting delivered, including the RTO registrations and all other processes that would take care of. That would require a lot of documentation. So we are looking at this phase more from a Thrive perspective. What can we do as the next thing?
Great. And I'm sure, and we all wish you good luck with all the Thrive mode you are in. And although the momentum still seems to be uphill for you, and going north in that sense, but I'm sure you must also be exercising a lot of caution in what you do here on, because even while the mode is Thrive, but I'm sure somewhere the conservation aspect of utilizing capital and balancing out innovative solutions with minimal costs, and any thoughts on this?
Yes, I didn't intend to say that it's a kind of full-blown attempt to capitalize on the occasion. What I meant to say is we want to keep our morale and motivation high, and of course for an organization which is predominantly of the R&D DNA, that's what will get us. And then so therefore, if you ask me after this Thrive stage, what is the next stage that we want to propose to people is to inspire in the sense of, okay, you be the leader, look at the opportunity. And to that extent, I'm happy to share we were one of those very few who actually announced discounts to our customers early on at the onset of COVID, because we realized the customers who are using our products are going through a very bad time like anybody else, but we wanted to extend the little bit of support that we wanted, which got reciprocated massively, honestly speaking. And so that has been a good boost and big motivation. So that's where it is. Yeah, so it's not a stage of euphoria yet, but we are wanting to keep the morale high.
Brilliant, thank you, and that's very, very real. Jitesh, your take. We've heard one side of the story, which is a Thrive mode story, and love to hear your perspective with your special experience on the SME segment and the small business segment and all the entrepreneurial work which is happening in India and so many startups out there. How do you see the challenges for these organizations, and how in your view are leaders of these organizations coping up? What are they coming to you for? What's your take on that?
Thank you, Gaurav. Happy to hear some good stories in these times like what Joy shared. And thank you for this question. What I'll do is I'll try to answer this question in two perspectives. My own perspective as an HR leader in one such organization, and also a little bit of a view from my role as a consultant. So, and I'll try to answer specifically from a challenge in the performance area. So the performance management typically, traditionally, we were all practicing it as a series of actions between strategic thrusts and annual operating plans, specific role objectives, key results, etc., measures, evaluation results, and rewards. But the whole edifice of this performance thing was built on a certain clarity about the end of your goals and the strategy that the organization was going to deploy to reach there. Today, both the long-term goals and the strategic clarity both have disappeared. In my own organization based out of Dubai, where we service government projects and global multinational brands in the luxury segment, about 70% of our contracts in the beginning of the year were cancelled. These included some marquee international events like World Expo 2020. The Middle East is highly dependent on global tourism and logistics, and it's a hub for both travelers and transportation. And with no visible business even in the future, we were forced to deploy a mix of furlough and layoff measures for our workers and staff to stay organizationally viable. And we're currently working with about 50% of our workforce. So talk about the other side of Thrive. We are on the survive side. The impact of such actions are manifold. The furloughs and layoffs, etc. We have less people to do the work, and even those who are all left behind are tentative. they're worried about the proverbial Damocles sword that's hanging over the head. We're dependent on these surviving employees to help us come up with some innovative new products, new creative solutions, and be more cost efficient. In short, produce more with lesser resources in an increasingly uncertain world. Also, we had introduced pay cuts and cessation of increments, etc. And we also now need a new set of hot skills, like ability to adapt to fast changes, multiple competencies, even health-wise, say higher immunity for our workforce. A new requirement which we didn't have earlier. We are struggling to keep the motivation high in an environment when the traditional motivating factors like role clarity and task significance and task identity, these are all absent. And rewards are scanty and absent. We are also facing the big challenge of keeping the staff and workers who are on furlough also motivated, because someday they have to come back and they're on subsistence pay right now. And when they're going to return to work, it's going to be a totally different workplace. They're not going to be highly productive and ready for the world as they were familiar with. So as a leader and leaders like me who are in similar organizations, the biggest challenge is to rapidly come up with something to get the organization back to the same level of functioning with less than half the previous revenue. No certainty about the future, and all known ways of dealing with performance having become ineffective or outdated. So MSME leaders today have to be supremely sensitive to the fact that they have limited resources, no reference role model to deal with this kind of unprecedented change, and very few options for performance levers. So earlier, I'd like to tell some of the people who work with me that performance management is like a lot like driving a car. Now, we had roads with potholes even then, but if we kept our eyes on the traffic, the dashboard, and the road, we could drive and reach our destination safely and surely. But today, performance is like managing performance is like piloting a plane through turbulent, cloudy days. There are so many variables the leader has to be mindful of. So many internal factors and totally dynamic, ever-changing external factors. And unfortunately, there is no ATS to guide us to a soft and sure landing. That's where we are, Gaurav.
Some real humble confessions, and it's good to sometimes acknowledge our, how vulnerable we all can be at times, and I think there is a great deal of satisfaction sometimes in knowing that you are vulnerable and not hiding behind the curtain in saying that no, I'm fine, So I think that's the first step to change in that sense. So, some good insights, Hitesh, and I particularly will come back to you. You talked about being able to manage 100% outcomes with 50% cost, and that really means that the whole reward framework goes upside down. So we'll come back and hear more about your views on that. But before we get there, we spoke about the organizational challenge at a large level, and we've looked at a different set of examples of different organizations or different mode organizations. The thrive and the survive are sort of dealing with it. But let's go to a stable, long-standing organization of Radhika, and what she has seen pretty much in making sure that business continued as usual, and remote working and all these new realities that sunk in. Radhika, your take on how you guys managed it, and how you see it going from here.
Thank you, Gaurav. I think it was music to the ears when you said long-standing organization. Yes, I would say it. I am fortunate enough to be working with an organization which is more than 127 years old and is in the healthcare sector. What better time to be working in an organization like that than now?
So, rare and lucky combination. So good luck there. Let's hear more from you on that.
Yes, knock on the wood there, Gaurav. Yes. So in terms of business continuity, I'll just start with a small example. So what happened was we started remotely working sometime in the first week of March. We realized this the situation will get a lot worse. And by then we had made offers to close to about 80 odd associates already, candidates already. And one of the questions one of my leaders asked when we were in this lead team meeting that we will start going and working from home now, he asked, and how about those people who are supposed to join us? And my response was, okay, and how about them? So he said, how will they onboard us? So I said, we will do a virtual onboarding because business will continue as usual. And then his response was, do we have something called as virtual onboarding? And then I said, well, we don't, but we will make one. And that was in March first week, Gaurav. And as we speak today, we have all of those 80 associates successfully virtually onboarded into the organization.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I think whatever in terms of business continuity, this was just one of the examples, and more from a performance standpoint, I would say there were a lot of projects that had been key projects that had been lined up, and it was really important that all of these associates joined us right in time to be able to contribute to those projects and ensure, I would say, continuity even in terms of what is expected of our R&D organization here to deliver. So all that we were doing, I would say, physically when we were in office and meeting face to face, we brought all of that home, and we continue to do that while we are all remotely in different parts of the city. So before the lockdown, some of our associates even decided to go to their hometowns, but none of that seems to have really impacted the outcome per se or what was really expected to be done. And going back to the point, Gaurav, I mean, we are in an R&D industry. So thankfully for us, it was a simpler challenge that people could continue to work from home with all the IT infrastructure. And we made certain arrangements for them to have all of that infrastructure at home. I'm sure a lot of other organizations which are more sales driven and require a lot of customer connect, there were, I would say, higher challenges. But again, everybody's talking about understanding and figuring out alternative ways to reach out to the customers. And I was speaking to one of my employees from the commercial organization of BD, where we do all the sales of our medical devices. And she mentioned that even the customers are being very, very open to virtual meetings over Teams and understand about medical devices, about the instruments, and they are just being very open about having an understanding of the products before going for the sales. So just there, Gaurav.
I think some remarkable attitude and great turnaround time. I must compliment the HR team, in your organization for being able to pull through. I think one of the biggest things we as HR practitioners need to do at this time, and which reflected so deeply in your points, Radhika, is to be able to give so much confidence to business leaders. I think there is a lot that they are dealing with, and I think it's time if as we as HR could rise up to the occasion and really fast track some of the initiatives that we always keep talking about, but a lot of them never see the light of the day. I think now is the time to go out and say that, okay, we as HR will deliver in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and here it is. Nothing is going to suffer and business is going to carry out as usual. So having said that, I quickly move to Tarun, and he's a techie all by himself. He's sort of making sure that one of the largest media organizations globally is ensuring that a large employee base not only stays connected and productive, but really is business as usual. So your points, Tarun, your perspectives, please.
Thanks, Gaurav. So a lot of it was mentioned by Radhika as well. So for ensuring business continuity, one of the things that was our focus area was employee safety and well-being. So 25% of our workforce, they actually go to the office. They have to attend, because in our case, it's about the printing of the newspaper, actual delivery of the newspaper, and other stuff. So a lot of people, and if we talk about editorial, so they have got huge heavy machines which cannot be brought at home. So they need to go to office to actually complete the work. So what we have done for this 25% of workforce is we have taken a lot of measures, and we have introduced a health monitoring app, which is integrated with our time management system. So I don't want to talk about the tactical part of it as of now, but the idea is that every employee gets a status which is red, amber, or green for each day, which is important to get the entry into the org premises, and it is in complement with the other things like thermal scanning and mask, etc. So just imagine, in case a red employee enters the premises, the facility will remain shut for multiple days, and it will hamper the productivity adversely. As a result, the newspaper may not get delivered the next morning, and more importantly, the employees may get affected, and if it is not detected, it may reach to their family and friends as well. So that is one of the more important things that we have done. And in today's scenario, organizations are also struggling. For us, there was earlier category as work from office, right, for maximum people. Now it is occasionally work from office. So what we are doing is we are actually launching a virtual app for kind of work seat blocking. What this will do is employee will be able to block a seat for a particular day to visit office prior to visiting the office. If we talk about remote working, again, it's a major mind shift that we have gone through. Being a traditional organization, we were not used to working from home. And now the majority of interactions have shifted to a physical virtual space instead of a physical space. Let us take an example of this particular offsite itself. It's happening all virtually. So as Radhika mentioned, all our onboarding, all our HR processes, including onboarding, induction, are now being done virtually and successfully. So just to give an example, for onboarding, the employee fills all his data and submits the document online. All the systems, that is our core HRMS and verification agency, gets updated automatically. We have gone ahead and did a virtual offsite as well, right? So engaging employees virtually over a couple of days is not an easy task. But it is very important to ensure that individuals are aware of all priorities and understand how each function within HR is collaborating to achieve the goals. So we did a offsite recently and it went well. With increase in work from home options, I think the requirement of brick and mortar spaces will reduce. And that is what is happening. We are actually kind of reducing the number of offices that we operate through. And the only thing is that we need to embrace the right technology to manage these unpredictable times. Organization, as we have done, needs to reorient their processes to match the new normal using the right technology. That's all you've got. Thanks.
Some fantastic work there. I must compliment you for, Tarun. I think never would we have imagined, an online offsite, and I don't even know how does that sound. Talking about it. So great insights there. I'd move to Joy also and pick his brain on some of the BCP and the remote working play and his take on that. I know he's talked about the third dimension of getting people back to work. So Joy, can I specifically also maybe request a little attention from you on that area?
Sure, absolutely. I like to start where Tarun ended, declaring the new normal, and I always took a stand by saying this is new, but this is not the normal. We as an organization also attempted all of those virtual stuffs, including onboarding, offboarding, offsites, and all of those things that are virtually possible. I'm sure Tarun and team will keep churning out more and more avenues for us to do what we do on a daily basis virtually as well, which is great. Here is something that might sound a little provocative in the sense of, I have realized, with all this glam and glory around remote working, home-based working, etc., there is a growing concern about the productivity at this point of time. The first wave was all about euphoria. Hey, we all managed to get people safely back home. We all managed to connect all the systems without, any sort of breakdown, collapse, etc. That phase is over. Today, people are seriously looking at what is the productivity of these people who are, remotely connected. And what I realized is a lot of us in HR, we take credit by saying, hey, we managed to keep the morale high, motivation high, engagement high because we run everything as usual virtually. But let me tell you, that's not what it is. If you look at what you saw in the initial phase, which was, morale being high, motivation being high, engagement being high, was a byproduct of what you invested in people when they were in the office. And that investment is giving you a return in the short term when people are at home, which is a hard realization, but is a ground reality. Now, as we are into the 4th or 5th month of remote working, where what is typically called as the mind share and the time share of the leader is not there from an employee perspective, all of these things. More importantly, productivity will have started declining. I happened to read an article published by Dale Carnegie, wherein they said 30% of the productivity has already come down. Well, I'm not keen to comment on where are we, CDK as an organization, in terms of our productivity. We wish and we believe we are at 100% at this point of time. But me as a human resource leader, I would say the new normal that all of us keep hearing and then occasionally keep talking is not going to be the normal and should never be the normal. Because we are all used to socializing, seeing each other in the office, and then of course, creating our own engagement by saying hi and hello. All of us have got a sort of second identity in the office, which is beyond your professional identity, which could be that I'm a good singer, I'm a good dancer, I'm good at XYZ. All of those things are missing, and it will be too hard for me to say, hey, this is the new normal, and you live with it. And so what is provocative about Gaurav is, one, has the productivity really dropped? Are people willing to accept it? That's one. The second dimension of provocative stuff that I see is a lot of organizations have, early on the lockdown situation went and said, hey, we are going to be operating 75% of our workforce from home. Lot of bold statements being made, and that started playing into the minds of people. OK, if others can do, why not you? I don't know whether it is really feasible, whether it's going to be really creating the outcome that business is looking forward to. Me as a human resource person with 22 years of experience, none of it is valid at this point of time on this topic. I stand skeptical is the statement that I want to make.
I don't know how to react to that. Okay.
So just a pointer to it, whatever Joy said, we are social animals, like human person, we are a social animals. We need interactivity, but this is not by choice with us. We have to kind of make the best out of the situation. That's what we are trying to do.
Absolutely, and so many times do I think to myself that yaar ab bahut ho gaya, matlab chale office, that's how life has been. But I really beautifully like the point you made. The relationships that people are trusting now are the relationships which they made while they were at work. And it's such a deep point you made, Joy. And I think somewhere for those relationships to deepen, I think getting back to office will definitely be something that people will look back for. But thank you for those aspects. We've already talked a little about digital transformation, and we've talked about building new tools. How do you ensure that employees are really genuinely being able to comfortably adopt to these tools in terms of digital transformation? That's one of the aspects. How do you ensure that ROI on these digital tools is being achieved? How do you ensure that some of the smaller organizations can also afford or can also rely on technology which may be available for free these days? So, love to hear some more thoughts from you, Tarun. How do you make it? How do you bring technology to the masses? How do you ensure it's ROI centric, and how do you ensure that people are really adopting to it?
So technology, is touching every part of our lives and improving the quality. It's kind of dramatically changing the workplace, the style of working, and the way we collaborate. So when we say about adoption and all, so there are two parts to it. So one is the technology itself, that is the tools that are available in the market, and second is how part, right? So let me first talk about the tools that we are using and is available in the market. So kind of technology, if you talk about HR processes, technology has enabled all the processes from hire to retire to evolve over the years. As I mentioned earlier, employee engagement and convenience is the top priority. Hence, we cannot operate without mobility. And we have a best-in-class HRMS. But yeah, obviously, when we talk about the best-in-class HRMS, it comes at a cost. But one of the solutions that are available, there are a lot of vendors and solutions available in the market, is the personal virtual assistant, or the chatbots commonly known as. They are not very costly also, and then can provide a great purpose. So in our organization, we are leveraging chatbots for the same to enable kind of employees to find resources and take care of their necessary actions, especially the mundane ones, and over a voice command. Say, for example, they want to apply for a leave, or they want to mark attendance. They need not go to any system and just do it through the voice command. And in our tech world, it is said that no UI is the best UX. So you need not train. What does that mean is you need not train every employee on the new user interface of a complicated application. Employee should be able to just pick up his mobile and say whatever he wants, and the mobile should revert to him with the necessary information. Let it be the training which he needs, or any of the travel applications or other stuff. We are also leveraging these bots for getting the pulse of the organization. They reach out to the employees at different stages of employment life cycle and get their feedback on various parameters. And obviously, there are various analytics and dashboards available around it. Going forward, chatbots can also act as one of the most important touch points. And these actually sit on the HRMS systems, which the existing HRMS systems which we have. Other important aspects in analytics, it's very important for improving the speed and quality of decision making. And again, we have deployed various tools for it. Now, when we talk about the technology investment, as you mentioned, today the market is flooded with the HR technology options available. It is very important to choose the right technology, and decision should be based on what's needed by the business instead of what's trending in the market. That is very important. We should understand what business outcome are we expecting out of deploying this technology. Every penny that is invested at this time needs to count and make sense. All technology investments must be supported by adoption numbers. Plus now the approvers or the management is asking for instant ROI, instant and measurable ROI on whatever is invested. So the most important part is we need to distinguish between the necessity and the threats, right? So there are a lot of technology or the tools are available in the market, but we need to understand what is actually needed for our organization. I'll give you a few examples. Time and attendance system, if we talk about, there are various options to it. You can deploy a time capturing machine, which is very costly, or you can use a mobile app to kind of do it. So we, in our company, using a mobile app to actually do it, the later part. Other technologies that are available are work from home monitoring. They can track everything. See, when you are sitting in front of the laptop, they can tell you the stats around the time spent on the laptop, or if your eyes were closed, you were sleeping, you were yawning, and etc. Other could be the social distancing apps that are available in the market. So I'm not talking about the government apps like Arogya Setu. It's actually the apps which I'm talking about are the real-time tracking. So when you are in office and you are in close proximity to an employee within 6 feet and for more than 30 seconds, then your mobile will start buzzing, right? And it will say that you are in close proximity to a person. So a lot of solutions are available, but you have to decide actually which will make sense for your organization. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thanks, Tarun. You know, all that I can say is that maybe we need to come together and create a certification program around the tech skills that HR needs to have, because all that you said, I mean, not everybody may be as fortunate as possibly you are right now. You're sitting at the cusp of technology. So great work there. But I think there's a lot for the larger HR community to really, be able to pick up and see how some of these tools work. Very quick point from you, Radhika, on the same issue.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav, and thanks, Tarun. When I was hearing some of the terms that you were using, it was almost like they sounded alien to me, despite the fact that we do leverage quite a lot of technology here in the R&D center that I represent. But nevertheless, Gaurav, honestly, it hasn't been easy. This has been, I would say, a transition. And I remember Tarun had mentioned some time back saying that we don't have a choice. Men are social animals, and we just have this urge to interact with people, but at the moment we don't have a choice but live in this remote environment. So honestly, it hasn't been easy, but I would say eventually people have come to terms with technology and we are all leveraging it. And whatever I'm going to say now, Gaurav, I am an eternal optimistic. So to me, it has been a blessing in disguise. Despite being a handicap at technology myself initially, I think I have personally also really adapted to it well. So for us, I think the biggest theme was to stay connected with the associates despite the remote working environment, which continues for us till date. And one of the ways we could have done that was to leverage technology. There were a few forums or platforms that we had created for our associates prior to moving into a remote environment, and we were just figuring out how we can transition all of that into a more technological setup. I would say the entire organization did a fantastic job on that. Some small little examples here, like we had a coffee with the leaders session, and our leaders would take them to Hatti Kafi. It's a popular joint here in Bangalore, and people would just sit back, relax, and have informal conversations around a lot of diverse topics around the organization. Now, those were replaced by virtual coffee sessions. If Tarun can have a virtual offsite, I can at least have a virtual coffee session here. So people would come with their coffee mugs, including the leader, and it would be set on the calendar saying that this is again that informal forum, but more in a virtual environment. So that's one of the examples. The other is, like I said, the theme was staying connected with the associates. So we were having these town halls more on a quarterly basis, but we've now shifted them to video town halls on a more frequent basis than earlier, and just again providing platforms to hear from the leaders. The employees can hear from the leaders on what's really happening on the progress of the organization, and ensure, I would say, safety, emotional and psychological safety in the minds of the associates, and for the associates to ask any questions that they may want to ask from the leaders.
Thank you. Staying connected. That's the big thing emerging. I shift gears now quickly, and we've talked about performance, and it's time to deep dive into that. I was looking at some numbers which said that from a recent survey that nearly 1/3 of the organizations haven't yet been able to figure out how to even measure productivity in the current times. So they don't know how they are doing. Those who know how they are doing feel that, the house is divided. Nearly 1/3 feel that their productivity has gone down. 1/3 feel that their productivity has really gone up, and 1/3 are trying to figure it out. So that I don't know which part to really rely on, and I'm sure this is again sectoral. This is again size specific. But Jitesh, your views on how do we make sure that from your insights, that what are some suggestions you'll have for even smaller outfit organizational perspective, that how do they even can continue to measure performance and ensure that they are on the right path, and yes, of course, be able to ensure that the rewards are aligned to that right path. I know it's a very tough question, but I can give you a full 2 minutes to answer it.
That almost sounds like COVID and asking for results in business. Thank you, Gaurav, for the interesting question. Yes, I do have some insights on this coming from a work both in the MSME sector and the larger organization. So the classic performance management model, of course, we've seen that it's not working, and the COVID-struck world, it's very difficult to look at how to do performance so in more classic way. So our organization and some of the organizations that we are working with, we're using a simple 3-step model. Unfortunately, even in this COVID world and where we're working virtually, results have to still be real. And we need real profits, and we need real revenues, and we need real jobs. So we are using this 3-step model. I just break it down to 3 simple steps. First, what we do is we create a dynamic roadmap of the long term. Unlike the earlier time, you're only fixing the broad strategic themes which are relevant to the organizations. We educate the workforce, the leadership, the middle management, and the frontline teams that these strategic themes are indeed volatile and dynamic. And with each passing day and emerging reality, the themes are likely to slightly change course. The first point is about fixing strategic themes and not goals, hardcore goals. Secondly, what we're trying to do is what we call daily standards of work. So these daily standards of work are linked to the strategic themes that we spoke of earlier in the first point, and then team members are encouraged to produce high quality outcomes against these daily standards of work. We also have introduced a lot of near-term gratification rewards to those who deliver these daily standards of work consistently, because a quarter, a month and all seems like a very long period. And thirdly, which is the most important part, is we need to not just work on work-related metrics, we also have to face and focus change adaptation and change enablement metrics. What I mean by that is how much is the workforce requiring help in adapting to these changes? Who is an early adopter? Who is a laggard? Who needs more autonomy to adapt, and who needs more guidance? It's important to identify these measures and support these responses to change. And lastly, talking about rewards, we believe that in new age performance management systems, we'll have to be more humane. In an age where classic standards of evaluation of performance are not so relevant, reward systems may have to become more humane, and differential rewards may have to be given to employees depending on their existential, existential state in the organization, their existential status of what is going on in their lives, overriding classic metric. It's not very easy. So probably what we need is an adaptive performance management system. How organizations are going to use and make it intuitive and adaptive and balance this human side with the economic side. That's going to decide the game as we research. Over to you, Gaurav.
I think, we should have given the COVID new drug trials to you, because what you've been able to capture in 2 minutes, I think it's very well rounded and seems to work and appeals to me deeply. Whether it's about setting performance themes and then ensuring that there are daily standards, gratification, change adoption. I think some of the points there are absolutely bang on, but I'd let Joy also come in and share his perspective on the same topic.
Thanks, Gaurav. Slightly different perspective, but of course, essentially complementing in nature. If you look at Radhika did speak about psychological safety. So for me, most of the organizations, at least that is very similar to CDK, is in the face of hybrid model, partially operating from home and partially from office, and then that percentage will only increase in the sense of office-based working will eventually go up. Now, one thing in this whole transition that is critical is to build a psychological safety in the minds of people, in the sense of what will happen to my health is the most predominant thought that will run through any of our employees' mind, in the sense of my health and that of my family. And that needs to be effectively addressed. You can put it as part of your reward system, benefit system, or your own employee care and well-being or wellness system as well. CDK as an organization, we looked at it very seriously, and we introduced a COVID-specific insurance cover for all our employees, which essentially covers if a COVID treatment happens from home-based, which typically most of these medical insurance do not cover. So that's a special cover. The other one is we enhanced the medical cover, the normal medical cover for all our employees, considering this special time. So that was one way of building some sort of a psychological safety in the minds of people. The third thing was like Tharun kept on mentioning, there are a lot of possibilities of using technology to create psychological safety as well. The question that runs through the minds of people when they have to come to the office, Gaurav, is not how is my health? I'm worried how safe is for me to sit next to a colleague in the office. And I need to be guaranteed that, while I'm good, by my colleague who is going to be sitting next to me is equally safe for me to get to the office. So we created an in-house app quickly that actually allows employees to do a sort of self-assessment at the end of every week. At the end of the self-assessment, they get a report for themselves by saying, you are safe, good that you're taking care of your health. You can, if you want, come to the office. And the parameters that we generally look at is people with immunocompromised situations, or children with below 5 years of age, or anybody who have had any sort of an exposure to COVID related stuff, we would obviously disqualify them. The interesting thing to note here is I have seen consistently for the last 4 weeks, we have around 10% of our employees, despite being good in every sense, psychologically not feeling well to come to the office. And that is going to be something that human resource personnels who are part of this conference might like to think about. How do we take care of that as we build the next, or as we move into the next phase of let's say work from home, which is partially from home and mostly from office.
I think you really touched about a very strong nerve. All of us have been really talking about all this while. Employee safety psychologically, and ensuring that they are 100% sure that they are going in a safe zone. And I think the kind of responsibility it puts back on us as HR practitioners, that it's going to be very difficult if there is a viral infection which sort of spreads within the organization. And we've seen so many organizations who opened shop, and there are hundreds of people who've been infected while being at the premises. So it's absolutely sensitive right now, and how we manage this entire piece. But from a psychological safety standpoint, I'd also like to bring in Radhika and Jitesh. So Jitesh, maybe you can go first in terms of, what's your messaging around bringing in psychological safety, and what are the magic words to tell someone beyond the app and beyond the tech, of ensuring that people are declaring that they are safe, etc. But it has to be something beyond that possibly, and what could be that something beyond that is what I'm aiming to get from you.
Yeah, thank you, Gaurav. I also happen to be working in the area of neuroscience, and some of the themes that we constantly hear today, the social distancing and the digital collaboration, both of them sort of go together. It's like twin sisters. And however, in my mind, this has resulted in a few phenomena like ambiguity. There's more ambiguity, there's more anxiety, there's more alienation. And this is sort of creating a trust vacuum. And everyone is responding by increasing the volume and the quantity of their communication. And this is really not helping. The world around us has changed, and the communication, how it is being consumed, is also changed. Today, we're sitting at home, we're sitting very close proximity to our families. Well, that's comforting to many of us. But on the other hand, when the CEO is presenting, there's that pressure cooker whistle, there's children running around, and all this thing happening, and work and home space is getting melded. We were not ready for it. Even receiving communication, therefore, has become difficult. Perhaps why our meaning-making systems that we typically use to make sense of the world around us is making us interpret everything with anxiety and difficulty. And social distancing is inversely proportional to a sense of safety. And you are referring to that, and apps are not going to help us there. When we are disconnected, we perceive increased asymmetry of information. I know less than other people. What we don't know, we tend to hate or be afraid of. It reduces our sense of safety. And I can vouch from my work in neuroscience that our brains regard any sort of distance as a threat, whether it is physical, social, or emotional. So my mentor, David Rock, used to say that the only way we can be more safe is in the company of our social others, our families, our friends, our colleagues, our customers, and surprisingly, we may not like it, but even our bosses. Because in the virtual worlds, even in virtual worlds, our real relations are what will make us safe. So the solution, the panacea that we're all looking at is more connection, more interaction. And one of our clients tried it out in our place, which is an IT company. They were finding out that from their social groups that the chatter is very less and there's no much energy in the organization. They started organizing digital meetups, informal meets on digital platforms, and exchanges beyond work. And they found that the energy was back to where it was, even though people were not physically meeting each other. So perhaps my response to you would be about making more real relationships in a virtual world, reducing the distance emotionally and socially. Thank you, Gaurav.
I think pearls of wisdom coming out there. So Radhika, your views?
Yeah, thank you, Gaurav. My views are slightly different. I would say the only theme that I have here is what is the tone from the top coming up. And because all the employees really pay a lot of heed to what's really being told to us at this moment of crisis, at this point in time. With due respect to a lot of organizations where remote working is not possible, for us, I think globally the tone from the top has been that employee safety is the biggest concern for all of us, is the biggest priority for all of us. And our global CEO has gone ahead and told all associates that till the time you feel comfortable coming to work, you can go ahead and continue to work from home. So to me, I mean, that is a big, big step. And again, second, depending on the health of the organization, if the organization is in a good, sustainable state at the moment, then communicating that message back to the employees and stating that you are in safe hands at the moment and we'll take it one day at a time. I think both these things will definitely add to a lot of psychological safety, because the biggest worry right now for each one of us is not just this pandemic, but also the effect effects that it would have on each one of us, on our jobs, on our roles, etc., etc. So, I mean, what is the tone coming from the top and how is it really impacting each one of us will really determine the safety aspect.
I think you've made a very pertinent point here, Radhika, when you're saying what's the tone from the top. And, you know, a lot of times, a lot of people call me seeking help when, you know, they've been asked to go, and there are so many conversations which we haven't talked about today, when managers are calling their people कि भैया देख लो धंधा हो रहा है तो ठीक है, नहीं तो अगले महीने से देख लेना, you know. And you know, we as HR behind closed doors can talk about all the psychological safety, etc., etc. I think the biggest psychological safety we can extend is assurance that we are in it together. And I think that's something which majority of the organizations who are cash strapped right now are you know, failing to, you know, deliver, and walking the talk is becoming really difficult. But I think some great inputs there from all of you. I mean, it's been a delightful conversation for me personally. We have a few questions, and we maybe we can take 2 or 3 of them, and then we can move towards closing this down. But before I get to the questions, if there's anything any one of you wants to bring in which we haven't spoken about, which has been on your mind and you think it's relevant for our conversation, I'd love to hear it from you.
Just as a hardcore HR person, Gaurav, I have probably one small thought that's left in my mind that I want to put out.
Sure.
I think, you know, all of us are going through an extremely challenging times, and, you know, with, you know, competing priorities. And from a human resource perspective, for me, I would see a kind of, you know, typical behavior from the leaders. One is, you know, how soon can I regain the lost revenue, which is a good thought from a business perspective. And the other thing is, you know, how soon can I rebuild the organization? Today, all of us think the organization exists. Yes, it exists virtually, but, you know, it's no longer the same organization that you probably had first week of March or second week of March before all of us, you know, shifted our work from office to home. I think it's important for the leaders to be clear as to which is going to be their priority. Is it rebuilding the organization or regaining the revenue? And for HR leaders, if they have an opportunity to advise, they need to give the leaders the right advice as what is going to be long term. And that's the only thought that I want to share. Thank you.
Strong point there. I mean, thank you for that. We jump into some of the questions that we've been getting now. One of the questions that we've received here is, you know, talks about the whole fact that, you know, we are bringing a lot of work. Earlier days, we used to bring work home, and now there doesn't seem to be, you know, any cutoff time that, OK, now while at home, the work stops here, you know, and a lot of employees are also facing the heat when it comes to their work-life balance while being at home, you know. So thoughts around that, and, you know, what can organizations do? What are some of the thoughts that you guys have of any rules that you've been able to establish in this thing? So the question is open. Anyone who has done something exciting in this area, I would love to hear it from you.
So Gaurav, I'd like to respond to that question. I spoke earlier about daily standards of work. And I'd like to use that framework to respond to this question. And it's important for the employee and for the organization to establish what they would have used as a daily standard of work to deliver what they have to deliver. So there has to be a standard of work. When time is, it sort of expands to all over the day and across boundaries of home and work, it's basically because the standard of work has not been established. It's not been contracted out with the boss. It has not been contracted out with the organization. So essentially, this means having a work contract, a psychological contract with the bosses or with the co-workers on where work ends and which time boundary means it's home and which time boundary means it is office hours. In our organization, which I represent in India and outside India and across my clients, we've been able to do change some success with this. Because initially on, it sort of seemed that the whole day was working. And I personally experienced that. And we quickly found out that contracting was the best way to do it. I would encourage everyone to enter into a psychological contract and establish a daily standard of work to address this issue.
Thank you. Thanks, Jitesh. Next question, Tarun, I'd possibly like you to answer. And while we briefly spoke about this question is about the trade-off between investing in technology or keeping the business alive. So if you were to, out of your experience, choose what technology to invest in and what to delay at this point, because every penny that you invest now in technology is going to eat away from your current cash flows. What are a couple of rules of thumb, or some own guidelines that you use there, which you can offer here?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, investing, so business continuity is the top priority. So if you talk about the print media, it's kind of delivering the newspaper to the doorsteps of the employee. That is the first priority. But accordingly, another thing is that employee engagement, as I talked about, that is also very important. So fewer investments into technologies, is very required, and that's what BCCL is doing, right? So, for example, I mentioned the health monitoring app. That is not a choice. That is a mandatory stuff that we need to do. So some of the mandatory we need to actually differentiate between the frills and the necessities. So we should opt for the necessity and the necessary technology investments that needs to be done for the employee in the HR space and the business continuity as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. The next question is also fairly interesting. I mean, all the things that we've been trying to do in HR to ensure that we stay connected with people also have a bearing on the contrary. Now, one of the questions which is coming up is saying that you guys are doing so much engagement. At the end of the day, it's losing charm, right? I mean, because everybody is seeming to do almost the same thing. So how do you ensure that there is a pull factor in any of the engagement practices that you want to establish in your organization, and it's not just a tick in the box, and employees really look forward to being engaged with the forums you've been able to establish? So maybe Radhika, you want to take this one? I know engagement is very close to your heart as well.
Sure, Gaurav. I think one of the thoughts that are coming to my mind are that it is very important before designing any of the platforms for engagement to really understand and be sure of what need are we trying to address here. And as long as we are absolutely clear on the need that we are trying to address, and we customize the activity or the approach or the engagement strategy to that need, I see no reason why we will need to worry about the pull factor. There is already a pull. So it is just about customizing our own approach, understanding that need, customizing our approach to that need, and going ahead with it. So that's broadly my 2 bits here, because most of the times, and some of the mistakes all of us have done in the past, is to give good to have things versus what is the need of the hour and need to have. So if we are able to address that, I feel that pull will never be a challenge with such initiatives.
Looks to me that Joy wants to make a remark here. Joy, am I right?
You get everything right, Gaurav. So including this, the point that I was trying to say is, I want to compliment Radhika by saying, she said, the pull. I would also say the push. Employees need to be clearly aware of the fact that they are remotely connected. Out of sight is out of mind. There is every need for them to be connected with the organization more than ever. When they were in the office, probably they did not attend town halls. They missed out in all hands meet. Everything is fine. They used to pick up the highlights, during coffee session or, at water cooler side, cafeteria, canteen, all of that. Today, none of those things exist. And, you will feel more and more psychologically alienated if you don't create that push in you to go and attend. I have seen, our own town halls, attendance, dwindling, and then I have already brought it up to the attention of leaders by saying, hey, be mindful of the symptom. They are, beginning to get disengaged unconsciously. All that we can do is to tell them, please make sure that you come on for every call. And if there is an opportunity for you to switch on your video, switch on the video, make your presence felt and stay connected. So it's pull and push.
I think very beautifully summed up, both of you. I think, Radhika, when you say that, as far as the objective is clear, as far as you are doing something for achieving a specific purpose, it's I think half the battle won. It shouldn't be a cut, copy, paste or a tick in the box, or like in HR, we were enamored by the best practices of sorts once upon a time. And I think it to those HR folks who are yet just doing a lot of things for the sake of engagement, I don't think engagement is the in isolation is the end goal. Engagement for a purpose is the end goal, and that is what I think you need to really work on. But I really also echo the sentiment so much that Joy mentioned, that it's very easy to get unconsciously disengaged, and a little bit of policing, depending upon the kind of demographics you are dealing with, may still be required. We have another question coming up around upskilling, and everybody's been talking about so much change, so much tech orientation, so many new skills. Somebody talked about change adaptiveness, and so on and so forth. How do you upskill, and what are one or two tools that can go in quick upskilling for whatever you're trying to achieve? Open question, whoever may want to take. There is a silence there, so
Gaurav, Gaurav, Jitesh here. So I wish I get some consultation from Tarun on the tools. I am more an application guy, so I'm going to talk about application. So whatever skills we learn, I think there are a lot of tools out there for us to pick up the information. So you have all the LMS platforms, you have all the education platforms, the EdTech platforms that are available for us to learn a new skill. I think what's more important in today's situation for organizations and for individuals is application. How do you bring that new skill into application? Because you have learned it in a very short frame of time, and you now need to apply it quickly to produce results. So in our organization, we have a simple formula that goes like every day, everyone, everywhere. So you learn it and you practice it every day. You practice it with everyone that you can possibly do it, and you practice it everywhere you can possibly do that. And that sort of multiplies your ability to learn and apply. And if that's conscious by the individual, you learn it fast. If it's aided by your supervisor and your colleagues, it becomes even more faster. So for me, the answer to that question is not about just learning. I mean, learning is, I think, 25% of the activity. 75% of what effectiveness is all about when it comes to learning is about application. You get feedback, you make mistakes, you continue to do that, and that sort of brings in more results. So application of learning with your colleagues, you sort of co-creating your next skill. That would be my response to that.
Interesting. Radhika, you have any views on upskilling? You've been a learning professional.
Yes, Gaurav. And in my mind, I was thinking, I still believe that a lot of upskilling happens on the job. And I would say it is, again, going back to what Joy had said, onus on the associates themselves also to have that inquisitiveness and that desire to learn more, and therefore take that onus and go ahead and probably ask for, let's say, cross-functional assignments or those opportunities for them to be able to build on those skills, rather than just rely on tools from the organization or platforms for upskilling.
Fantastic. So another question we are getting is around, the whole transparency aspect, right? I mean, it's a very interesting context that we haven't really touched about so far. The real situation of the business sometimes may be scary, and may not be told as is. Also, it's important that people know what the real situation is. On the contrary, right? In order to be able to stick it out together and ensure that, and especially in the context of the current time. So, Jitesh, maybe your take on ensuring transparent, understanding of where organizations are, and this is very, very relevant, especially from an SME standpoint, right? Because you live by the month sometimes, and you live by 15 days sometimes, and it's a very difficult one there. So your take on that, and also how do you sort of see transparency related to not just performance but also rewards?
Yeah, so interesting set of questions, Gaurav, and very happy to answer this. Transparency is sort of uncompromisable, but there are levels of transparency. So I would like to take the example of a small child. So if there is a small infant in your house and that infant is the age of consuming, let's say, Cerelac or Farex, Even though the child wants to consume, let's say, chicken biryani that's left next to him, you wouldn't give it to the child. Not because you don't want to give it to him, because you know that it's not good for the child. That would lead to diarrhea or dysentery or maybe very harmful. So information is a lot like that piece of that food. How much one can digest is what one should do, and one should share. And it's important to be transparent. And if it impacts me as an employee, then I should know it. If there is a window where the promoter can make sure that the impact is not reaching the employee, it may not be relevant to be that transparent. So in the MSME sector where I work, there are a lot of existential issues that confront organizations, including my own. And it becomes sometimes difficult to share, and it's not necessary also to share all the information with the employee, because there are issues which the employee may not be able to comprehend. There could be issues which the employee may not be interested to know. There could be issues which the employee may not be able to contribute. So there is a little bit of a filter that the organization will have to apply with the levels of transparency. But if it impacts the employee in any which way, and there is a reason for the employee to know it, I think there is no two ways about the definition. Transparency is not something that we can use basis whims and fancies.
I think very well handled, and your perspective is bang on here. I know there is paucity of time, but in the maybe we'll just take one last question, and that's again a very interesting question, because it's about the community that's listening to us today. Because we've so far talked about employees. Now this question is saying that who takes care of HR, because HR is like our soldier, fighting out all the enemy out there, or protecting our nation and protecting our organization. HR is like that. So who takes care of HR, and what do you do to ensure that HR by itself stays committed, energized, and capable of riding this wave, not just for itself, but making sure that the others, depending upon the size of the ship, are also onboarded and moving with it. So it's a very, very loaded question. I don't know, maybe Joy, you want to pitch in here?
I was hoping that you don't put my name around that, but then that's fair. Thanks, Gaurav. I have just two perspectives. One is, obviously we are the biggest preachers of self-motivation, right? Time to practice it in the first place. It's a golden opportunity. Practice it, and let's, demonstrate that on the ground, that we are self-motivated during this crisis time. That's point number one. Point number two, our biggest motivation is, we are going to rebuild the organization, and, we are contributing to resolving an issue which is unprecedented and, almost inexperienced by all of us in the past. And that itself should drive us to do every day what we are supposed to do and go beyond. That's the way I look at it as.
So you're saying it's about Atmanirbharta again. That's what I hear you say, that, it's time for HR to be Atmanirbhar. As the nation, I mean, you are your own leaders and your own soldiers. Any other perspective on this very interesting thought?
Yeah, Gaurav, I'll just like to add here, it's about, wearing your own mask before helping others there. So right. To me, it's like, what better time to be in the space of HR than today? The whole world is looking up to HR leaders to give solutions to some of the critical challenges during this crisis. So I think for us, it's more important that we do decide the right thing for the organization, for everybody. And in that journey, of course, the first thing is we take care of our own selves, wear our own masks before going ahead and helping others.
I think, it's a very beautiful conversation, and I would have loved to continue it for another hour and a half, but I don't think, we'll have the time. And, it's time to thank our audience firstly for joining us. We've really touched about some very, very beautiful points, and, whether it's about ensuring that, or knowing that, we don't know it all, and we are discovering as we move around, trusting our instincts, ensuring that we are producing more, and managing costs, ensuring that tech is the key, ensuring that we are in it together and we take good care of those around us in terms of psychological safety, knowing that the new normal we think is here is the new normal. We don't know what is going to be the new normal, knowing that relationships are the key, knowing that everything we do has to be ROI driven, and knowing that we have to manage our performance thematically by the day, and ensuring that we all keep progressing to our end goals. So with that, we come to an end of this wonderful conversation. I would love to thank my co-panelists for bringing in very rich, diverse views. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Team Digital HR. We are bang on 6:30. We started at 5 and we've been able to finish at 6:30. So much appreciate your time, richness of discussions, and I'm sure everybody who's been hearing this would go back home with some good nuggets. So until next time, take care, and over to Team Digital HR.
Thank you, Gaurav. And throughout the discussion, I was over the kind of ideas and the insights that we as business leaders are getting here. I'm sure the similar sentiments must be shared by all the listeners across. And before I request Dr. Bakshi to actually come in with a summary and a formal vote of thanks, I would like to inform the audience and the leadership group here about our initiative on employer branding. So we are coming up with a very interesting master class, which is going to be hosted by a popular consultant, Supriya Pradhan, to be hosted shortly. Ritesh, can you have the teaser, please? So we are planning to have a 3-day, 1.5-hour, 2-hour workshop on 23rd, 24th, and 25th July on the topic of employer branding. A lot of details are available on your chat box already. So I request you to please follow the link, have a look at it, and I'm sure in these times employer brand matters a lot, and this workshop will add a little value there. So let me request Dr. Prakash Bakshi, Executive Director, ASM Exet Center, to express the vote of thanks.
Good evening, friends. It was a wonderful discussion, so aptly moderated by Gaurav. In fact, you ran through the entire theme. Different points of view were actually put into a garland so that we could have a beautiful discussion. You have also summed it up, so I don't have to do that. In the last, I have been a professional for more than 40 years now. Perhaps my professional experience is more than the age of some of the people here, and perhaps even some of the panelists. I remember, more than 50 years back when my father gave me a small book to read, Parkinson's Law. All of us must have read this book or heard about it. Work expense to fill the time allotted for its completion. And over the years, many derivatives of this started coming in the managerial life that I had. So it included a mixture of Peter Principle and Parkinson's Law, that you can continue to spend money till you reach the limit of the budget that has been allocated to you. Another extension from the HR point of view is that everybody thought that we can continue to have manpower as actually planned in the manpower plan of the organization. So we always had a finite limits given somewhere that this is what we can do up to. Now COVID changed all that. There is no time limit available to us to finish a job. There is no budget now as earlier planned. There is no manpower now as earlier planned. And as we have all discussed, we have to find new ways of doing new these new things can be done sometimes remotely and sometimes you cannot. In fact, Tarun and Jitesh and Joy tried to bring in that there are works which cannot be done remotely. We have talked about perhaps 50% of the GDP which comes from the services sector and employs 25% of the working population. But the remaining 50% is the shop floor and agriculture primary sector where people have to be there. You just can't do that remotely. And HR challenges of those areas are very different from the HR challenges of the services sector. When an IT company facing a challenge in HR is very different from a manufacturing plant or that faced by an agriculturist having a 50-acre farm or a 100-acre farm. We need to perhaps discuss these issues also in another seminar. So what happens is that whether it is services sector or manufacturing or the primary sector or any type of business, the SOPs we had were framed on the basis of certain premises based on the time availability, the manpower availability, the budget availability, and all that. And therefore, our SOPs now need to change. And that is perhaps the biggest challenge that we are having. The second thing that is happening is that alternatives, when we talk of disruptive strategies in executive education, but disruption comes from almost anywhere. We being in the education sector have realized that online education was something which got forced onto us. But once education becomes online, it does not remain within the physical boundaries of that institution. It can go anywhere. So you can start teaching online from Mumbai to anywhere in the world. So your institutional campus is no longer relevant. Not only institutional campus is not relevant, the educational institution perhaps is not relevant. In one of the webinars we had co-hosted with Asma, we discussed whether there could be a Netflix Academy of Management tomorrow. You don't need an IIM Ahmedabad or IIM Bangalore now. So I think the challenges are coming from various quarters, and we are trying to find solutions in very, very different ways. There were extremely interesting issues that were discussed here, and very aptly, as I said, moderated by Gaurav. So thank you once again, all the panelists, for some wonderful discussion, and I would appeal to Rahul to have one more discussion on this, which focuses more on the manufacturing sector. I think two of our participants wanted to speak more about the SME sector and the travails that they face. And I think we need that also. So thank you once again, and I look forward to similar discussions in future.
Thank you, Dr. Bakshi. In fact, we are constantly thinking about, those important topics and subject areas which concern the HR community a lot, and we welcome suggestions from all, and for variety of thematics that we can adapt in our future events. We at Digital HR are constantly working toward the benefits of the HR community, and we will welcome collaboration in every possible manner from all ends of the community. So with this, I thank all the speakers again. I take the opportunity to thank our sponsors and supporters as well. So let me thank InnoServe Solutions, our learning partner. I would like to thank our knowledge partner, Strat Board. I would like to thank our employer branding partner, Cobus. I take this opportunity to thank ASM Executive Education, for becoming our academic partner. Last but not the least, our own academic community, ASMA. It has been, a great pleasure collaborating on both sides of the spectrum. ASMA on one hand and Digital HR on the other hand actually gives me tremendous power. And with this, I thank everyone who attended this session today. Stay home, stay safe, and look forward to see you in the next event with us. Thank you so much.